This is the prelim for Mpumalanga. My granny, when they changed the names, she used to call it Mapoep Alankal. For those of you who are good in Afrikaans. So, here we go. So, as I said to you, they always like to ask the ordinary share capital note and the retained income note. So obviously question 1 didn't ask it. Question 2 here ask it. The ordinary share capital note. So let's go. When I do the ordinary share capital note, you know, you always start with the opening and the closing. The issued and repurchased has to be in the order that they give it to you. You're not going to lose marks if you swap it, but it's going to influence your average price. Okay, so let's quickly look for where do they give me information. And they give it to me here at the top. Here they say, authorized is 1.2 million shares. That's the amount of shares they are authorized, allowed to issue. Can they issue more? They can if they apply, and then are authorized more. Okay, it's not an impossible thing. So, on the 1st of July, there was already 1020. On the 1st of Jan, all the unissued shares were issued. So now let's quickly see. There is 1.2 authorized, 1020 is issued. So what's the difference? 80. 180. So 180 is going to be issued. Yeah? Do they tell me the price? No. No. So I leave it because most probably I'm going to balance on it. So on 31st May, 20,000 shares were repurchased. And guys, get in the habit of saying repurchase at average. That you remember you need the average price. And what do you know? You know. You don't even, they say it's repurchased at 420. That's the total price, not the average. Which 1 rand is above average. So you know it's 3 rand 20. How did I get that? The 420 less 1. Okay. But there's also another way I could have gotten it. I said, this is 1.2 million less 20 gives me 1,180 million. And you can go check. If you say 3776 divided the 1,180, you're also going to get 320. Okay. So in other words, I'm going to highlight this for you. This will also give you this. Okay. Or like we did it. So now if I say 20,000 times 320 gives me what? 64,000. And please remember the bracket. And now I reverse. So I say 377 plus 64 minus 308 gives me 756. Okay. And now what I do, if I look, I see this is the way they ask note 3. Ne? So the first thing I want to see is, did they ask me anything about shares? So what is shares falling under? Which operation? Operating, investing, or financing? Financing. Financing. Okay, and there I see it. B is repurchase, C is proceed. So I just write for myself repurchase and issue. Sell shares. Now, if I look at the repurchase, they already told me I repurchased 20,000 shares and they told me it's at 4.20. Remember, you always want the total price that you paid for it. Okay, and for safety's sake, I would put it in brackets. as if I am doing the face. Most of the time, if they ask it like this, they say ignore the brackets, but I'm not taking chances because it depends on the guy setting the paper and setting this specific question. Because you do understand the final exam is not set by one person. Okay, so what does that give me? 884. And the issue, I literally just transfer. That's 756, so that's a definite 2 bagels for you, because you get a bagel for reversing and you get a bagel for transferring. So there's 2 easy ticks. Now I go and I see, okay, what else do they want? Now I'm saying to you, please guys, do not be tempted to do the question marks. So in this case, they gave question marks. In the final exam, what they like is they gray it. When they gray something, they say to you, we are not going to mark this. Meaning, do not waste your time on this. Okay, so let's look at A. A is income tax paid. So if I do income tax paid, I do a T. So I'm going to say, please go look downstairs. All right, someone draw an arrow, whatever. And I'm going to do a T for SASH, income tax. And I say, I got an opening and a closing in a bank. And an income tax, receivable and payable, receivable and payable. Okay, and now I go look. Now I remember the info they give me. Can you see here? What they did is they gave me SASH separate. So I always remember, I look for debit, current asset, receivable. Or I look for credit, current liability, payable. Now can you see this one is the current liability and the current assets. Can you see that? Okay. So now I see the current assets is a receivable of 18,000. And if I look here, receivable is here. Remember, I always say to myself, opening equals old. Nay. So, opening equals old. O-O. Okay. Now I go to the closing. So the closing is a liability, which means it's a payable. Payable is also on the debit side, and it's 32,000. The income tax I find in the income statement. Can you see? Income tax in the income statement. Okay, because they get tax on the business income. You see how they link? So now I look and I see here they give me income tax 426. If you wanted to do it vertically, you would have said 426 plus 18 plus 32. If you wanted to do it minus pluses, whatever, that's your 2 methods. Okay, so I get what? So it's 40,000. No, 40,000, so it's 386. 376. And I'm going to put a bracket because it's income tax paid. Okay. So I go on. So I've done B and C. D, ask a change in loan. So when I do the loan, I always look. They can either say non-current liability or they can say whatever loan it is. Okay. Am I going to look at the short-term loan? Not at all. Because that's what I'm going to pay next year. Did it have an influence on my cash this year? No. So I only look here and I see there's a mortgage loan. And the mortgage loan, can you see it increases? So it increases, so it's an inflow of cash. So it's positive. How much? 1,280,000. And it's going to be without a bracket. So I'm just going to say it's an increase. And can you see that my theory that they're going to mark brackets here is valid here? Because how are they going to know if it's an increase or a decrease? Because they didn't ask you for a description. They just say, oh, the calculation. Okay. So number E. Now I see number E. And let's make our life a little bit easier. Can you see E is the change, the opening, and the closing? So go right for yourself. It's the change, the opening, I draw my thick line, and the closing. Let's make our life easy. Now I go look. What do I look for? Oh, I'm going to look for bank overdraft and cash equivalents. So I see there's cash and cash equivalents. There's bank overdraft. And now I start. So bank overdraft and cash. So my opening will be positive 20 less overdraft 250. So this is going to give me a bracket 230. The closing is straightforward. There's no bank overdraft. There's only a closing of, did I do it right? Suddenly that 20 looked weird. 107. And it's positive 107. So if I work it back, I say 107 plus 230 gives me. And can you see this is an inflow of cash, which is very good. Okay. Opposite than the one we did Saturday, where it was a total outflow. Can you see this business is handling its cash in a better way because it's also during COVID. It's also 2020. Okay. So there you got your 13 marks. Now they ask me questions. Can you see here the thing I didn't read, because that's my weak spot, is I don't always read, I assume, is they say, note, the answer must be indicated in the correct sign. You see? So you must show your brackets. Okay. So, next they say, the cash flow statement highlights some significant decisions taken by the directors. Explain two of these, quote figures to support, and explain the benefit. Not just anything. They don't say, oh, what is going to be the consequence. They want to know what's going to be good about this. Now, this question is one of your easiest questions to get marks, because can you see it's 6 marks. It's 6 marks. So the 6 marks will literally go 4. You need to do 2. So the first one is you're going to identify one. There's a tick and a tick. Then you're going to give figures. Figures gives you a tick and a tick. And then you're going to give a comment. So 4 out of 6 is a definite, because this you can't have wrong. This, you will see when we get to ratios and how to analyze it, your mark allocation will always be 2/3 of the mark allocation is straight. Identify and figures. The other third would be comments. And the comments is also easy. Okay? Now, let's go look. What you're going to look for, and I need you guys to focus. What you're going to look for is you're going to look for the fixed assets, you're going to look for the shares, and you're going to look for the loan. That's the 3 things where the most cash changes. Right. So let's go have a look at our answers. I'm keeping these two together here. So I see here First thing I want to go look is, did a lot of fixed assets happen? And I can see, yes. Can you see how much cash went out of my business because of the fixed assets that we bought? So you're going to say, your first point is going to be, we bought fixed assets. There's a tick. And then you say, for 3, 3, 5, 7. There's another tick. Do you think you can do this? Definitely. Now, what benefit does it have a business to buy land and buildings? Appreciating value. It's a very good investment. So what you will say, it's an investment that will increase in value. There's another tick. What is a land and building? Remember, when you were grade 9, if you were with me, I would have taught you the assets on land and buildings, vehicles, equipment, petty cash, cash flow, trading stock, debtors, control, fixed deposit. What is land and buildings? It's an asset. So it's an increase in their tangible assets or their fixed assets. Ne? Which is always good. Ne? Okay. Can you see you already got 3 out of 6? Now let's go look. I said, go look at your shares and your loan. So, if I look at my shares, number B, that's not a big amount that I repurchased. Issued is big, ne? But what is even bigger? The loan. So I will always try and never ever do the same thing twice. So don't do buy fixed assets and sell fixed assets, or issue capital and repurchase capital. Don't do that. Rather try and get different things. So I would rather go with loan. Capital won't be wrong. I would go with loan because loan is the biggest. So I will say they made a loan, or they increased the loan. And how much was that? 127. 1280. So already I've got 5 out of 6. And everybody sitting here is able to do that. Now what does it do if we get a loan? And remember now, they didn't ask me the consequence, so you can't say there's an increase in interest. They are asking me specifically here, what's the benefit? It increases cash flow. It decreased the overdraft, or it cancelled out the overdraft. They used that money to cancel out the overdraft. Because what do you need to understand is interest is different on different types of loans. And your interest on an overdraft is way more, it's a higher interest rate than interest when you buy land and buildings. So when you buy a fixed assets, when you buy land and buildings, it's got the lowest interest rate because you do it over 20 or 30 years. It's got the lowest interest rate. So you would rather put your debt, they call it a consolidation of debt, you would rather put your debt in your home loan, because your interest rate is lower than in an overdraft. And I think that's what they did here. Well done for seeing that. If you had said they have increased capital, ordinary share capital, and you will say what's the amount? It was 756. Then you would have also said it's an increase in cash flow. Another one that you will say is it improved, it will have an effect on the debt equity. But now the problem is my loan became more. So if you look at your debt equity ratio, this is your loan. This is your shareholders' equity, right? Now, your equity increased, but your loan also increased. And can you see your loan actually increased with a bigger amount than your equity, right? So your debt equity ratio is going to become weaker. Does it make sense? Because what does a debt equity ratio say? It says, for all the capital I got on my own, I borrowed so much. And what's happening now? I borrowed more than what I got on my own. So now this will become weaker. Does that make sense? Remember we talked high geared, low geared last year? No? So it will influence the company's gearing, but not in a positive way. So you can't, I would not mention that. Let's quickly look. I did give you the answers. This is the memo. So first of all, can you see here they speak high language. They say investment in fixed assets. If you just said buy fixed assets, it's the same. Acquisition of loan. You can just say they made a loan. You don't have to speak like you are extremely clever. Financial assets matured. So they saw the fixed deposit. Can you see here? The fixed deposit. The proceeds from financial assets. What is a financial asset? It's your fixed deposit or your investment. Can you see it's positive, meaning it decreased, meaning the cash came back. So you could have mentioned that. The issue of new shares. Can you see? And then you can go look. So whenever we invest, so what we wrote now is perfect. There's nothing wrong with what we wrote. I just want to show you the whole memo because maybe your brain works a bit different than mine. Okay, so what they said there, what they always do is when your land and buildings or your fixed assets for that matter, in other words your vehicles and your equipment increases, if we buy, they see this as a expansion, meaning your business is getting bigger. And a bigger business means bigger business, right? So that's always a good thing. So they say there, expanding the company leads to more profits. Well, how do they know expanding the company? Oh, because we bought fixed assets. Payment of loan will lead to savings on interest expense, and we have established it's on the interest on overdraft. The financial asset matured resulted, look at these words, resulted in the eradication of the bank overdraft. So what they say, instead of, like we said, they replaced the overdraft with a mortgage loan, they say they replaced the overdraft with a financial asset that matured. Okay? The issue of new shares will enable the business to use funds for expansion. Why? Because money came in. This one I don't agree with. So I will draw a line through this. I think this is wrong. It didn't improve the debt equity because my debt, my loan, because I don't take all my debt. Remember your debt equity, you only take your mortgage loan. And my mortgage loan is more than my owner's equity, shareholder's equity. Okay. Next question. At the AGM, and again I say to you, the AGM happens once a year. And the AGM usually happens after the financial records have been set up and published. Ne? Because they are a public company, so they have to publish their financial results. So now, what's happening here? After, can you see that if their financial year ends 28 February, the AGM would be something like May? Because they first need to get the audit reports and they need to get the director's reports and all of that. Because what does the external auditors do? They come in to audit the financial statements. Okay? And it happens once a year. Okay? Please never say, oh, have more AGMs. Annual means once a year. They can have more informal meetings maybe, or have polls to get people to vote about something. But the AGM is once a year. Okay, So now at the AGM, the directors announced that the company will conduct training of all employees in terms of morals and ethics. Okay? Which is really good, because a company needs to do training. Remember when we did in grade 10, we did salary and wages. What was that one? Now I really cannot remember the abbreviation, where it's training. They take 1% that needs to be from the guy's gross profit. Skills development levy. Okay, thank you for that. The skills development levy. So the business, the company, for every worker, they need to pay 1% of that person's gross to SARS. Ne? And SARS keeps it in a reserve. And if they do training for their people, they can claim it back from that 1%. You see? So this is good, because it means they're going to get it back. They're actually not going to pay for it. They're going to get the money back, or a part of the money back. Donate funds towards cleaning up the environment. This is the triple bottom line. Eh? The triple, is it triple bottom line or triple bottom rule? What is it? Line. This is business studies, ne? Where we have to, and it's part of my social responsibility. Right. And it's really good for the public image, ne? Your public image will skyrocket. And it's actually free marketing. Because what do? While we're cleaning up the environment, we give all our workers T-shirts with our logo. And it's not just the logo. What is the thing that you are saying? The slogan. You have your slogan there, and you make sure that SABC News is there, and you make sure that News 24 is there, and Marula Media, and Soweto newspaper, and everybody. Can you see? Free advertising as well. And if you are even better, maybe you are Coca-Cola, then you make sure that all your workers are drinking Coca-Cola, and you take photos while they're cleaning. Okay? Okay, so here we go. Explain why it's necessary, although this will cost the company a lot of money each year. State 3 points. Because first of all, by law, a company is obliged to train. That's part of the thing. They have to train. And then we do the triple bottom thing. Now I see here again, it's 6 marks, 3 points. So please don't just write a word for me. Okay? Just have a little respect for me to be able to give you 2 marks. So sometimes we are lucky. In the memo they will say 2 marks per fact or 1 mark for an incomplete fact. But these days what they do is they say 2 or nothing. So if you just give me a 1-word sentence, I think the only 1-word sentence you can give is it's part of the, don't just say social responsibility, say it's part of their social responsibility. Okay. It will create a better working environment, né? Because there's not going to be any sexual harassment, because we are doing morals and ethics. There won't be people stealing and white-collar crime. What's white-collar crime again? White-collar crime is if we do fraud. Né? It's part of fraud, but it's when we do it through the books. Okay. Corporate responsibility. Ne? Can you see King Code? King Code. Ne? Corporate responsibility. It will increase goodwill. If you go clean up where your workers live, ne? Can you think that the workers will be more positive? You will also see your mining companies. What they will do with social responsibilities, you'll see that people who live in a mining community, those kids usually get study bursaries, even if their marks are very low, because that's how they give back to their community, by giving study loans. Published financial statements will look good, because, yes, we need to pay for the training and we need to pay for the cleaning. Ne? because obviously you need to transport the people by buses to get them there to clean. You need to buy black bags. You need to buy those things that stamp, whatever. So it's going to appear, and you're not going to say sundry expense. You're going to say cleaning the environment expense, so that it's very transparent when the shareholders look at the statements what that money went for. Can you see? It's very clever politics. Have you ever seen when someone is voted in, suddenly the next day he cleans somewhere? Just open your... wait, the best one was our president. The first week after he was inaugurated, he took a fly affair, or those days it was another one. But one of these local flights to Cape Town, and he was sitting with the normal people. But since then he's only taken chartered flights, ne? Exactly. It's marketing. And yes, it's good for the community, but that's not why they do it. Don't be fooled. Please don't be fooled. It encourages new shareholders. Why? Because your share price is increasing. Why? Because you got a good image. People want to invest in a company with a good image. And if people want to invest, what happens? The demand increases even though the supply of shares are the same. And then what's going to happen to the price of the share? It's going to increase. What's happening to the share prices now with the war in Iran? Your share prices in petrol companies will go up, ne? Because now there's a shortage, so the prices is going up. But in other industries, you'll see the share prices is going down because business is going down. If we have such a shortage of petrol, who's going to deliver food to checkers for you to buy? Who's going to go to work? You already know. Mukhuri told us Sri Lanka already got a 4-day work week, ne? So that they can save fuel for 1 day. I wish we could do that, but it means that we are in a really bad place, so actually we don't wish that. We'd rather come to work than not have petrol. Okay, the company gives to the community. It improves their image. It's a form of publicity. King Code advises this, ne? King Code is all about corporate responsibility, and it's tax deductible, ne? And you can put in there, it's the triple bottom line rule, whatever, ne? Business people. And that's it. So I want